And as we continue to track those U.S. China trade tensions, they are certainly mounting on the back of the latest tariffs taking effect over the weekend. Footwear, televisions, apparel among the consumer goods getting the biggest price hike after tariffs on Chinese imports took effect. We're talking about 15% tax there. This comes as the U.S. and China trade talks reportedly stalled due to struggles in confirming schedules, according to Bloomberg. Let's bring in Dave Dodson. He is a lecturer in management at the Stanford School of Business. Dave, give me a sense of where you think things stand right now in terms of those trade talks between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, it's trench warfare, right? I mean, we're in trench warfare. And if we don't change the terms of this battlefield soon, I would say that Donald Trump's going to be selling golf memberships in 16 months, because if he loses the economy, he loses the White House. And I've been saying that he's made two catastrophic errors, but there's still time. The first one is that when you're fighting a battle against an economy as large as China, you need friends. And we don't have any friends right now in this battle, even though there's lots of countries, both in Asia and in Europe, that feel the same way we do about China. The second thing is he's on his way to losing the business community. And if he loses the business community, then he's not going to be able to win that trade war. And you only need to read the business press in all of the major publications, including your own, to see that the business is getting very frustrated with it. Now, look, there's still time. But if he wants to end this trench warfare, he's got to do three things. And the reason he has to end the trench warfare is this. We think short term. Our business community thinks short term. We think about months and quarterly cycles. They think about generations. And politically, we have the leader of our negotiations right now, Donald Trump, is facing re-election in a few short months, whereas his adversary on the other side is there for life. So we can't be doing these tariff battles, which only inflict short-term pain on the other side. First thing, what we need to do is we need to build a coalition like we've done in the past, both with real wars and trade wars, so that we're going there with way more heft. And we can do that because there's other countries that feel the same way we do about China.
But let me ask you this, because, I mean, you know, this is an argument that has been made before. Why do you think the U.S. hasn't taken that approach, number one? Number two, is it too late to do that when the president has approached this in the way that he has by continuing to add tariffs on imports that are coming in?
You know what? You'd have to ask the president why he ripped up TPP, which would have given us 11 other countries to fight this battle, and why he's chosen to fight China and the EU and other countries all at the same time. I think it was a mistake. I think he felt like if I had the flexibility to be the only negotiator, I could do a better job against China. But what he didn't really realize is that he can pull these countries together and still basically be calling the shots, because the United States is the largest economy within that federation. And by the way, you know, as I said, China doesn't fear the short-term pain the way we do, but they do worry about long-term structural change. And if you have this coalition together, what you can begin to do is have a very credible threat with China that the manufacturing that they're doing for us starts to move to places like India, the Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam. That's a real threat to China, because that goes after their long-term economic prospects.
Well, you can make the argument that move has already happened. In fact, a lot of Chinese factories have moved their operations over to places like Vietnam so they can work with U.S. customers. Let me ask you about the business impact that you mentioned earlier. This pressure the White House is feeling from the likes of tech companies, for example, that have been hit hard as a result of of Huawei being added to the entity list. I mean, it seems like the administration is in a bit of a bind. On the one hand, talking to the business community to say, yes, we understand your pain. And yet by him, for example, on Huawei, extending that 90-day window, he's essentially giving this company more time to build up its own parts so they don't have to rely on American companies.
That's right. And this goes to exactly my point about this sort of what are we doing in terms of creating long-term pain? And if we're giving a country like Huawei a chance to make these adjustments over the long term, then our threat to them actually isn't that severe. And that's what we need to be focused on, in my mind.
And finally, since we're talking about where things stand right now, what do you think is the economic impact of this latest round of tariffs? We've got a number of products that are on that list. It is a very long list, of course, but we're talking about consumer products like televisions, like speakers, apparel, and footwear. How is it likely to weigh on consumer confidence?
Well, this is why this element of trench warfare is going to probably backfire on us, which is this, is that We now know Americans understand that China is not paying the tariffs, that we're paying the tariffs. And estimates range from $500 to $1,000, and that's only going to go up. And so what's happening, going back to your earlier point about the pressure that business is putting on Trump, well, consumers are going to start putting that same pressure on Trump, which means that he is going to be staring down an election soon, and he's going to need a deal, whereas China doesn't need a deal. And that's why there's a certain sense of urgency about changing the terms of the battlefield away from this tariff trench warfare and tilting the battlefield in our favor so that China starts to see, like, I really need to deal with Donald Trump now and this trade war now. Otherwise, I'm going to suffer long-term structural change.
Okay, Dave Dodson, appreciate your insight today.